Scream socially. Hello, folks. Welcome back. We're up to episode 5 of the Ice Cream Social. We're back again to have another gathering and a chat and discussion about some of the great green reset agenda that has been foisted upon us all and has been accelerating over the last few years. But I'm sure most of you are quite well aware of all that. And being the slacker that I am, I've misplaced the intro for the Ice Cream Social. So you just got to put up with me just saying, hello, here we are. This is the episode number 5. And we're back once again to talk to you about some of these agendas and the new research being developed, new information coming out, and hopefully helping you see how most of this stuff is either bullshit, bogus, manipulation, propaganda, or things that you could easily sidestep or avoid. And, there are solutions to this potential idiocy that they're trying to force us into. So we will get into it. Hello to everyone in the chat rooms. I've got both Odyssey going, and there's some people in the chat on Odyssey. Hello, everyone in the chat. We've got the YouTube stream as well going, thanks to Lowlands Pete. And we've got the chat for YouTube as well. So hello to everyone that's in YouTube. And if you have a problem with one stream, try the other link. I'll put both links into both chat rooms so you can find either one and figure out which one works best for you, your connection. Because I'm sure they will do the usual of attempt to interfere with whatever we're doing. We just had some interesting fun with some super deep growly audio voices that sounded a bit like a cheesy horror movie soundtrack, but there you go. We seem to have got things settled down again now. So I will shut up and say hello to everyone else. Good evening.
Hello.
Hello. I did find the intro.
Yay.
You did? Oh, there you go. You see, I knew it was around somewhere.
You want to play it?
Hello, everybody. Hopefully I still don't sound like Vader.
No, it's okay.
No Vader, but I am getting that doubling effect off it.
Go ahead and lick something. We lick you very much. If you want to lick something, lick us. We love to lick. We lick to love. We are love lickers.
Yeah,
we love
too
to
good
lick.
not to play.
Yeah. We are the lick lovers.
That video is hilarious.
Seriously. And creepy.
Yeah.
That was hard to
It's
make
very
because I'm
meta.
not used to using that feature that makes the image move with it. So it was late. And I was like, screw it. It's good enough.
Yeah. I think it's the kind of satirical overdubbing that their craziness deserves, to be honest. I think it works better like that. It's got that little bit of a kind of punk element to it. The fact that it's just like, look, it works. Get on with it.
Yeah.
I much prefer that. That's why, I tend to do my content without much technical wizardry. It's just sort of like click the camera, do things, and then there you go. That's your video.
I wish I'd have brought some optimism to the show today. Actually, you were saying how we have solutions. I really, other than somehow tear everything down, like this book I've got to talk about, I know I've talked about before, but at unless it all goes away, I really don't see how you stop it. I know I said that last time, but like all of this, all the computer stuff, it's destroying the world, and it's only going to get worse. It's so bad. I'm sorry. I see things that are companies coming out, and I'd like to think it's all bull crap, but unless DARPA's just faking us out on everything that they're doing, I mean, it really does seem like they're rolling out like the plant sensors and all this stuff. I have links to show, but it is terrible. It's terrible. And they're bringing in all of these farmers. Like, okay, I'm going to send you one of these links here, Cookie. This inner plant, and they've got their inner circle of farmers that are just starting, they're saying, but they just have this small group of farmers that are going to help them roll out their plant sensors that are going to like shine under the right lens, shine at a certain light, and be able to tell, oh, is there pest pressure? Oh, is there a nutrient lacking? Any of this. But then you consider like Bill Gates owning how much farmland? I mean, does he count as one farmer that signs on to do it? But yeah, this is like what we talked about. I know Jeff and I talked about it multiple times, and I did videos about it, and there's more links that go with it. But these people, like if you scroll to the bottom and go to their YouTube channel and all this stuff, there's videos on there, but they're turning the plants into sensors, just like DARPA had wanted to do, to alert them to anything, landmines, illegal campfires, like anything. They could do anything. I don't know. I mean, and how would you know if that was your potatoes? Or they've launched corn, or not corn, tomatoes, sorry, but they're working on corn. They're working on soy. DARPA did potatoes. And then there's another group that's doing the potatoes thing. Europe, there's a big European thing for the potatoes, that to make them hardier because of climate change and whatever else they want to add in there. But DARPA had specifically talked about using potatoes as sensors because they don't need batteries, these plants. They're their little self-powered little...
Yeah, you can make a very low voltage battery out of a potato, you know.
Oh yeah, and they're just like they grow. That's what they want to do. They grow, and they continue on all the machinery that they put in them. The biological machinery continues on into the seed that then is produced. And I don't know. Sorry to be so negative and downer talk right at the beginning, but I'm like, it all sucks and it has to go away.
How dare you?
I know. Oh. Yeah.
Well, I know they've been desiring to get that kind of biosensor set up in agriculture, but also just everywhere, because they want everything connected. So, you know, they want some manner of being able to utilize each individual plant as a sensor.
Oh yeah. And I just sent you the link there in the private chat for the one DARPA article that we've covered before, but where they were saying that this project's very exciting with regards to translating our findings into the plant devices to help farmers. Yay. So they can help all the farmers too.
I like the way they try and maybe this is the kind of public-private partnership stakeholder capitalism bullshit that Klaus loves to push, but this idea that you can join in and design GM traits.
Because there's all the articles talking now about how we need to embrace this modification stuff. We can't do the old organic thing. Oh, it's not going to work.
Yeah, it didn't work for millions of years. Well, not quite millions, but you know what I mean. Hundreds of thousands of years. It hasn't worked. Now, all of a sudden, now GM tech can make it work. Yeah. You see, this is partly why I can still, even though I know many people probably claim it's delusional, but I can still be optimistic in the sense of I can look at something like that and know that their argument is completely fallacious. Because they're presenting it as being like there is no other choice. This is the only thing that will make farming possible. And it's like, no, sorry, that's just not realistic. That's not real. Yeah?
I want to be optimistic, but I consider these giant farm, like the landholders and all these different mega corporations and Bill Gates that own all the farmland, and so much of this stuff, it's not just the sensors, it's the Synbio microbes and things that they're spraying on the fields, they're coating the seeds with, and these things, like those spores that I talked about in that last video I did, those spores, I don't even know how you can kill them. They're so hard to kill. Like it's crazy. And they'll go dormant for oodles of years, and then they wake up and they're still this symbio life form. And if they're getting all of these in the name of biological instead of chemical, if they're doing all of these things that sound clean and green and winning people over with their pretty words, to put even the small farmers to put this stuff on the fields, they are, it is at like a whole like biocide thing, because these things are competitive. They take over the bacillus spores that I was talking about in that video. They outcompete other life, and they make their biofilm and go everywhere. But if they already, with the spraying that we did, like not only like Monsanto spraying, but the COVID spraying stuff, and they killed life everywhere, and now they're going to spread their life everywhere, their new life. It just seems like, even if I don't want it and you don't want it, if it gets to happen, which who knows when, some of these seed treatments they've been talking about for years, that they already had them on millions of acres. And then these inner circle Yahoo people, they are just a small group of farmers, they say, but it's still a lot of acres. I don't know. I think it's like, obviously there were people warning about this. Isn't this what the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, wasn't he like, it's going to be really bad, let's blow them up? Not me, I didn't say that, he did. But I did find myself I
was just going to mention Rosa Corey.
Yeah.
She's been talking about this kind of thing, maybe not the details of these kind of projects, but the inclination that we would end up with these kind of projects. And that's got to be what, 2-3 decades she's been talking about this stuff.
It's nuts. It's nuts. Like
right now we're witnessing them crash the food system that we're in right now. I mean, like we all know that they have to tear down the old world, bring in the new world. Same goes with food. You got to tear down the old food to bring in new food. It's going to be to the point where no one's going to have a choice but to accept these things, because there is no other food system.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And like Pete and Cookie, you guys have been talking about the farmer protests and stuff. And it's what are they protesting? What are they mad about? That they have to get rid of animals? What was it? Exactly?
There is more to it than that, but that was sort of like the straw that broke the camel's back, I think, for the majority of them. But it's been building up to this. And I know, as Pete explained the other night, a lot of it is to do with the land grabbing that they're trying to do.
Yeah.
That's the main thing,
Yeah.
And these protests have been going on since 2019. I actually covered a bit of that back in 2019. The farmers had their tractor protests. They were doing it since 2019. It's been ongoing since 2019. It was getting accomplished.
Yeah, and the farmers, they don't have to keep farming the way that they have been farming. What if they come back to them with some sweet deal, like all of these companies that want to pay them for farming carbon and things like that with their Synbio plants that will harvest and lock it into the soil? And what if they tell the farmers that raise animals, like they could do the animals that are fed the Synbio feed, and they could have some of those, but then they also have the farmers that they're talking to about, you can just farm animals a different way in a vat. Like if it comes down to their livelihood or their money, I just hope they don't just jump ship.
And I know this sounds a bit sort of like 2020 vision, hindsight is 2020 vision, but they have pushed the agricultural industry into this stage. I can remember when I was a kid that there was a butcher shop on every high street. There would more than likely be multiple of them. There was 2 or 3 butcher shops run by different people. The majority of them were family owned. They weren't a corporate chain. Same with things like greengrocers, which were just, fruit and vegetables. But the system has purposefully pushed society to create the mass industrialization of agriculture to the point, and I know that this is a common talking point and has been for a long time, that some of those corporations like Monsanto, they created a trap for many of the farmers because they encouraged them to take up their particular seeds that required their particular fertilizers and weed killers and pesticides. And that led to a situation where many of the farmers, a lot of the farming industry, the agricultural industry, can't really operate in any other way now. So you can't literally just switch methodology overnight because it will destroy those farming businesses. They'll go out of business before they're capable of returning to a different way of producing food.
Unless they just sell them these new seeds that won't require those fertilizers, and they won't be
key.
And it's the cleaner, greener, more sustainable, all the pretty words way to go. And
I was going to say
the key part of it, because the seeds here are all not GMO, right?
Well, these things I'm
we
talking
are very
about
big
GMO.
in the seed market. The
Heirloom Seeds.
Yeah, and they are very good at it, and there's very
This stuff's not considered GMO.
But the Monsantos and those guys, they want to take over that whole market. The Netherlands just signed the CETA deal, so the Canada trade deal. Right. So now we're gonna get all the green, the meats and the green stuff from Canada instead of the Netherlands. We export currently like 70%. That's gonna go down like half at least.
Yeah.
So it has to come from somewhere, and Canada has made the deal. Like, okay, yeah, we're gonna be the ones that gonna do that. So.
And since this stuff doesn't count as GMOs, and they don't even really have to.
But they get away with a lot more stuff, I guess, there than they do over here.
Yeah. It's terrible. But like they say, like I'm sending you another link, Cookie, they have to do it because everything's getting warmer. So it's summer. It's getting warmer.
The other thing I was going to mention as well is I don't know whether this is necessarily being covered in like any particular project that's like online that you could look at. I think maybe it's something that's part of the narrative or the agenda that's ticking away in the background. You see some example of it with people like Billy Bob Gates buying up loads of agricultural land. But I think these kind of situations as well, as they put pressure on those farmers, even if they're a small conglomerate, a small corporation, they'll still get gobbled up by those big, the mega corps that are out there. And I'm just inclined to think that a lot of this is to push towards automating the farming industry. So they are forcing those smaller farmers out of business so they can buy up that land. Some of that land will be used for other purposes, like the mega city, tri-state city thing. But also they intend to automate the farming industry more and more. So they don't want people still having their own land and having things like heirloom seeds, because that works counter to the state having complete control over food production.
Yeah.
Let me grab your other link as well.
It's not very exciting. It's just talking about how potatoes need to be redone and how they're working on it. DARPA had all their work in potatoes.
How dare we have a delusion that potatoes have been working fine for thousands of years?
Well, they can't alert the satellites and the drones to problems in the field, Cookie. We can't just, that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Those guys aren't.
Tubers feel the heat.
They're not talking in that one so much about them lighting up, but that's the other ones. I have more links.
So I was just curious about, well, hang on a minute. How are they claiming that potatoes struggle with the heat when originally they come from a warm environment, a warm area of the planet. And they're claiming it was up in the
talk about that.
The cool altitudes of the Andes. I don't think that's strictly accurate, isn't it? Weren't they found all across South America? Because they were brought back by the colonists when they were first colonizing South America, and they brought potatoes back to Europe and said, hey, look at this thing we found over there. So they weren't limited to low temperature environments like in the Northern Hemisphere. Yeah? That's a bit of history obfuscation. You know, they're hoping that just by claiming this, that most people won't have any knowledge of the history of where potatoes come from. And they're just like, oh, yeah, potatoes need it to be cold. Yeah, because we grow lots of potatoes up here. You know?
Yeah.
The humble potato was first domesticated near Lake Titicaca. Well, as far as I remember, that region in South America still gets quite intense heat during the summer season there. Just because it's at a high altitude does not mean it's cold. You know, this is a common misconception, I think. You know, the whole region is at a higher altitude, but that doesn't mean they don't get intense summer heats. They do.
Yeah. There's more links in there.
I'm wondering as well, why is it they're fixating on potatoes? Maybe that effect of they can utilize the energy generating ability, yeah, because it says energy independent. Because of the acid, it's starch acids, isn't it? I think that come out of the potato that create an electrical charge. So it serves their purpose to make them into sensors. Go on, sorry.
I was wondering if it's just while it's the plant, if that's the only time that they glow under the right lens, or if it's all the time of whatever the thing that they grew. Because I saw this interplant people are working on cotton too. And I was like, what if they make everybody glow? Like, what if you're under the satellites or the drones? What if you would fluoresce? I don't know. Oh, it's weird.
Well, it depends what kind of light spectrum, or maybe even not light spectrum. You know, there could be elements in our bodies that could be picked up by other kinds of sensors that are not necessarily on the visual spectrum.
Well, I don't even necessarily mean like if we ate, where'd Ben go? But if we were wearing the cotton that they grow that glows, not to the eye, but to the lens.
Yeah.
But I also put that link in the archive thing. I could get you that one. I know mine was covered in ads, so I don't know how yours will be.
There's a few.
There were a lot. But they just want to help. They want to help those poor plants. And if they don't know, they can't help them. If there's a bug or not enough fertilizer or a landmine.
They introduced a new gene to tap into the photosynthesis process, but they can't get energy enough to give to people that need energy. Yet they've just said they can clearly tap into the energy of a potato. I know you're talking like microvolts. Yeah, it's not a massive amount of energy, but this is a bit of a weird setup. What we got? Yeah, the fluorescent signals and monitoring the fluorescent signals emitted from the biosensors, the accumulation of reactive oxygen during the early phase, such as drought, extreme temperature, and high light. So I think that's just them making a claim of how their technology will help them to perfect the growing. Some of this as well looks like it's deliberately geared towards inside growing, you know, not outside in a field.
Well, they show the drones fly over in some of the videos on that inner plant. Yeah. Like they show how it's It's meant for satellite monitoring and drone monitoring so that you can cover more acres and know the problem immediately to be able to fix it right away before you lose the plant. Because we need to grow more food, they say, because we got so many more people coming, they say.
Oh, and so. Don't forget the scamdemic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they ain't got enough people anymore to do it for some reason.
Yeah.
I wonder why. So I was flicking through deliberately just so that we're not just letting it play, because that might make Google a bit uncomfortable.
What are we looking at? I still see the glowing potatoes.
Oh, I thought I'd switch screen to the other one. Oh, it hasn't changed. Hang on. Right, okay, let me try resharing it. It was the video of the drones.
Oh.
I thought it was coming up, but it didn't seem to. Now can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, let's find a bit where it shows the drones. That's obviously the control system and the analytics for what the drones are doing. This is the drones targeting an apple.
Apple. Oh, it's the harvester.
Apple has been assimilated. Yeah. I mean, how many of those? Like, how many lithium batteries? How many Wi-Fi internet connections? How much non-ionizing radiation is being emitted in this field that is being absorbed into all those plants?
It's green.
We have such a overpopulated planet. Wouldn't we want those people to have jobs? Why are we replacing people with machines if we have too many people?
Seriously.
I mean, even, like I mentioned it in Jess. I don't want to play the audio again because Google will probably have a freak out about it. But where he mentions labour shortages, why is there labour shortages? I know certainly here in the UK, it says that little bit. There's a common argument that I'll say British people, but I've heard it more often just referencing English people, because I'm in England, so you hear it phrased in that way more often. But British people don't want to pick fruit. They don't want to do that kind of job. So we have to bring immigrants in to do the job because the British people are too snobby to do it. They don't want to do that kind of simple manual labour. I know for an absolute fact that is utter bullshit. That is pure propaganda, because I've known many people over the years. Many years ago, I knew quite a few people who used to do seasonal farm work. They used to go and work for the harvest season doing exactly that kind of job, picking fruit. Now they can't get that work because it's pretty much dominated. It basically is dominated by companies that bring in immigrants en masse, like they bring them in 30, 40, 50 at a time. They have their own little compounds where they live. It'll either be in a shared accommodation somewhere in a local town, or it'll be literally on site at the farm where they'll have their own little village set up, basically. And they live there for the season, they do the work, and then they go home again. Most of them, some of them end up staying here longer, but there is no truth to there being a labour shortage. The labour shortage is an engineered facade to cover up the fact that they have deliberately used that kind of international transference of labour, because it's part of that whole international trade network that has been deliberately set up to destroy individual countries. To force the world into a one world system.
Now, if they've uprooted people and are moving them there, not just to be like occasional fruit pickers, they won't want to do those jobs either. They'll want a better job. And then we need the drones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I love the people, the lady that was standing in the field there holding the tablet, like she's directing the drones. It'll be Spot. It'll be the dog. It won't be the lady. She'll be in her sewer tube, you know.
This information will go to a central hub where an AI will calculate the most efficient way to operate that area of land.
Yep.
So this is all the bits, these little clips with people in. Yeah, you're right. This is all temporary, transitional. This is a distraction to make people ignore the fact that the end goal is the automated systems doing all the work.
She's just there training the machine on how. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just great.
This is what I mentioned earlier. You know, I mean, this would, you know, soon enough he won't be sat there either.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think that a lot of the way they've been setting up the agricultural industry by deliberately herding them towards that heavily industrialized mass production processes, they knew that as soon as these contemporary requirements to meet certain ecological goals that have been arbitrarily decided, the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, as soon as they're brought in, the current form of agriculture is defunct. It will not be capable of meeting those required goals, which means they will basically just trash it, and then people will be forced to have the automated version because there'll be no other way of doing it.
Oh yeah, like some of these new seeds, like I think it was the Interplant people, maybe it was a different company. It's, you get the seeds, you download the app, you know, like there's all new ways of doing things. It's not just you plant them and see how they grow. It's like probably a contract even. In order to warranty the seeds, got to use the app and the monitoring.
They'll probably claim that they need to be tracking every individual seed, because each seed will have the genetics in it to operate as a sensor.
Yeah.
And again,
you have to agree to the terms and conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before you put it in the ground.
And it negates those. Obviously, it's not just farmers that do this, but farmers are the main people that are producing the food that used to do this as common practice, as standard practice. All those people who have been working with heirloom seeds, who are using those traditional practices of you gather this, you know, you leave a few of your crops to go to seed, you gather those seeds to use for the next season. That they're not going to be allowed to do that anymore. Heirloom seeds will basically become contraband.
Oh yeah, you thought it was bad when Monsanto's crops mixed with your stuff. Like this stuff is biologically barcoded to know where it came from, where it's supposed to be. Where'd you get those seeds? You don't have the app.
And
eventually, backyard gardens and hobby farms will be made illegal eventually. And I have no doubt that those seeds will need an software update for the seeds.
Yeah. Spray this on the field.
That's what I'm thinking. You said they'll turn around and make claims like a natural heirloom seed causes too much carbon or too much nitrogen or whatever excuse. So that, you know,
they've already started doing that where they already started doing that where they've said like, oh, it's this corrugates or whatever they're called, we're poisoning people and stuff like that. So be careful the heirloom seeds you grow and stuff like that. Buy from the companies so you get the safer seed kind of a thing. Don't plant heirloom seeds and stuff like that. That whole China mystery seed psyop that made Amazon make it illegal to buy seeds from other countries and stuff like that.
Yep.
Eventually, they're just going to ban it all because there'll be an outbreak of something spread through the gardens, through plants.
Yeah.
5G seed.
Yeah. And they talk about how the mycelium in the soil connects all the plants together. So yeah, your heirloom seeds or whatever in your backyard, they could contaminate others, make them not green. Yeah. And I forgot to mention, I'm pretty sure that Interplant company, they're out of Israel. So super shocking.
But, yeah, they like messing with food over there and genetics.
A little bit, yeah.
Like that featherless chicken that they came up with, things like that. Hello to everyone in the chat. I was just checking back to the chat. Thanks for joining in. We've got 2 streams going tonight. There's one on Odyssey and one on YouTube. So if you're having trouble with one not running well, like if Odyssey is buffering a lot or anything like that, check the chat and you'll find the link to the other platform. And hopefully you can get a decent watchable version of it. Another one thing, what was I thinking of then while we were talking? Oh, yeah, in the news recently here in the UK, they've now been suggesting that certain food products, in particular meat products, may potentially carry the illness over time. So you should be careful about how long you keep these products in your fridge or freezer, because they could have the infection dormant on them, and every time you interact with them, potentially it's going to make you ill, blah blah, the usual kind of crazy bullshit. But I just thought it was worth mentioning that, because on the back of the current heat wave, again, the way they turned that into a agenda connected propaganda campaign, they're also still including these messages about the food production, even though so far here in the corporate mainstream, there's been very, very little discussion about potential shortages, other than when they're associating it to the conflict in Ukraine. They're not talking to people about how the farmers are finding it harder and harder to actually produce enough to meet the goals that are required, but also those kind of SDG restrictions. They've made it clear that they cannot meet those SDGs.
Yeah.
The general populace isn't really paying any attention, other than the few bits of sensationalism that gets pushed about the farmers protesting in other countries.
Yeah. I put that other link there just so you see that.
Right, yeah.
That's just Jeff and I talked about all this stuff for the agricultural reset stuff.
A great agricultural reset. Yeah. I'll do a screen share so people can see it on the page, but I'll put the link in the chat box as well in a sec.
Thank you.
Hopefully you're not getting too much background noise from my fan.
I hear my windows.
Yeah, I got the windows open, but there's very little air movement at the moment, so I'm reliant on the fan to save me from melting.
Oh, it's hot.
Talk about ice cream.
Yeah.
Melting. I'm melting.
We need that the Bacillus subtilis infused ice cream that we talked about on the original Ice Cream Social show, where they put that in there to help with drippy ice cream. I think it was a biofilm thing. I'd have to go back and look at it, but I know it was the Bacillus spores, which is just great.
To give it more sort of consistency, so it doesn't separate into droplets.
Keep it together.
Yeah. Even though they would prefer if you didn't eat real ice cream. They want you to eat the new synthetic versions that they've been concocting.
Yeah. Well, and it'll be dairy ice cream. Like they've already, that Perfect Day Foods, other brands. It's sold under other brand names, but that stuff's been out in the stores for a couple years now. And it's dairy ice cream, because the words, they get to choose what the words mean. And people just think they know what the words mean, but they don't.
Well, they used to know what the words meant, but the words have been appropriated and twisted to mean something else.
Yep.
I was just thinking as well that bio milk.
Yeah.
Whether they might start suggesting that could be used for making dairy products.
Well, I'm working on a thing that kind of touches on that. And there's more companies than just bio milk. There's this like Turtle Tree and a couple others at least that are doing the human breast milk bioequivalent, that goodies. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's that or cockroach milk.
Yeah. Or cockroach-based milk. It doesn't have to be milked out of the little cockroaches. Just we took a sample. No cockroaches were harmed. No cockroaches were farmed. Yeah. They were just
there's recent studies come out in the news there about how bugs actually feel pain. So now they're going to regulate the farming industry for insects.
Oh, sure. That's why they want the wild animals to go plant-based, because no life should suffer except every bit of life, because we're rewriting it, or they're rewriting it. But we define what suffering is.
So. Except the bacteria and the plankton in the ocean and the bacteria in your gut. Yeah. And various other levels of life that it could be argued can sense pain in one form or another. Even plants sense pain. They react to damage. That is the equivalent of sensing pain. So where are we going to end up? We're going to be eating rocks.
Well, we're going to eat the air protein.
Yeah, but that's they're feeding the air to microbes. That's how they make their and then they poop out the protein, or sometimes they just take all of it. It's not just a poop. I'm sure it's not really poop, but that's more fun.
There's no answer. You're just gonna have to eat space.
Yeah, well, breatharians, right? Like skip the vat and just eat the air yourself. Don't get it from
eat the sun rays.
Yeah. You'll be fine.
Not wrong with dog's milk, Dave.
Have you ever considered starvation? Come on, people.
I had to throw in that cultural reference there because it was so prescient. There's an old comedy sci-fi show that used to run in the UK called Red Dwarf, and it was about this bunch of misfits they end up traveling almost like infinitely through space because they're on an asteroid mining ship that gets lost in space, basically. And the comedy is just, usual kind of sitcom stuff. But they have an AI control system that is sort of reminiscent of HAL from 2001, the movie 2001, but done in a comedy fashion. And there's one bit where the AI is explaining to the one crew member, the one guy, that he'd been consuming what he thought was dairy products, cheese, milk, stuff like that. And the AI was explaining to him, he's like, well, it's dog's milk. Where do you think I get it from? We've got some dogs down in the one particular level of the ship. We'd use them to make the milk.
Nice.
So it's not quite cockroach milk, but, dog's milk will do in a pinch. Not wrong with dog's milk, Dave.
Just all part of the predictive programming.
Oh,
used in the form of comedy.
I think as well, I know you're saying it in jest, but I think there is a subconscious nudge about basically self-destruction. They're encouraging a self-destructive mindset by associating any consumption of food input, whatever we need to eat is being linked to some form of damage to the environment. So why are there so many people walking around who look massively overweight, or the opposite? They look painfully thin. That does make me curious about whether there is that psychological push is forcing more and more people into kind of a polarized mindset. They're either self-destructive and eating too much junk food, the crappy, shitty, worst kind of stuff, which means they become massively obese, or they are pretty much starving themselves because they're so obsessed with what they are eating and what it does to them, their body, you know, how many calories they're taking and stuff like that, they end up anorexic or bulimic.
On the predictive programming side of it, that kind of goes right into that. So the book I was talking about earlier, that it's Breakpoint by Richard Clark, which he's some big governmenty guy. That I have his Wikipedia. It says that he was like the counterterrorism guy, the cyberspace counterterrorism. He was a czar of something, but he was under all kinds of Bush and Clinton and somebody else. And I guess he warned of 9/11. He's warned of the cyber 9/11. I don't know. Maybe you guys know who he is. Anyway, this book, Breakpoint, I know I've talked about it before, but I found myself cheering for the bad guys for most of the book because it's seriously, it's neo-Luddites that are trying to destroy the whole internet connectivity thing because they're bringing on board this whole living computer system hooked up around the world. It kind of reminded me of the living computers that Microsoft was talking about on their YouTube a couple years ago. But that they were trying to tear it all down because they saw, in fact, they talk about like Kurzweil and the singularity and all this. I think they also talk about Ted Kaczynski in there, but that the people then they knew, in this book is I think 2007, but that it talks about how, your building can get blown up because your smart gas meter can be tinkered with from somebody somewhere else that like makes it turn on, and then a spark happens, and then boom, and all just trying to tear down the technology. Anyway, the guy, Richard Clark, I was listening to an interview because he wrote another book I did not read. I only happened to read this one. He wrote another book, I think it's called Warnings, and he talks about it reminded me of predictive programming. He talks about, it's called first occurrence syndrome. And he says that when you first tell people about stuff like, oh, we were warning them that 9/11 was going to happen, nothing like that had ever happened before, they said. So nobody would believe it. And so in my mind, that sounds like they got to seed these notions in people's brains so that when they pull it off, they accept that it did happen, sort of thing. And it wasn't just made up. But it is interesting when he's talking with the book. And then in this interview, he's talking about Cassandras. They're the Cassandras to him. But I almost feel like we're the Cassandras because it's the mythology thing. Like Apollo gave Cassandra the gift of seeing the future, but then the twinge of nobody's going to believe you and it'll make you crazy. And then Troy fell because nobody believed Cassandra's warnings. And so many of these things, like the biological agents and little biological machines that they're using, they call them their Trojan horses. And I'm like, it would make me crazy. Why aren't they listening? So, yeah.
It had been making me crazy for years, but once they initiated this, the scamdemic bullshit, I felt more sane than I have done in a long time.
Yeah, people used to say, "Why is your YouTube channel named that?" When I would give my card, what ride? Now people don't say that anymore. People don't say that anymore.
No, you need to give them a link to that. A clip of Bill Hicks talking about life is a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
Those people that tell us it's all a game and we're all being tricked, we always kill those people. Doing his usual kind of comedy style, but he says it quite clearly, and that's back from like.
That's in Revelations, the show Revelations they did.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it in a more modern context, I know like the mythological sense of it, and it encodes an archetype in a way. It encodes a concept that is truthful and helpful in the sense that it reminds us that we should not just immediately dismiss any when somebody brings up a possibility of what might occur in the near future or distant future based on what's going on at the moment, but the way it's been twisted into a modern context is just pure gaslighting. The system, the controllers, the people who write these narratives that then become psychological operations and propaganda campaigns and things like that, they know full well that many people will see through what is going on. They will see the reality of what is happening around them, and they won't believe the propaganda. So they push out this concept of, oh, well, you can try telling people, but it will just drive you mad because they won't believe you. It's a disempowering attack that they're attempting to project onto you by constantly reminding you, oh, remember Cassandra, she tried telling everyone and it drove her insane. So, it suggests that you just shouldn't bother because it will make you mad and people will just reject you. Whereas the reality is the majority of changes that occur in, I'll say society, but, it can have a knock-on effect to everything else about the world we live in. But the real changes that occur happen usually because those people who won't shut up about certain things, certain ideas, certain concepts, eventually get heard, or the undeniable truth of what is happening in reality eventually catches up to those people that are still caught up in their own little delusion of whatever form. It just makes me think of that sense of I think it was Schopenhauer, the classic quote from Schopenhauer, truth goes through 3 stages. First, it's ridiculed, then it is violently opposed, then it is accepted as self-evident.
Hopefully it's not just self-evident after they've already got this redesigned biological life in everybody's garden and it won't go away.
I do really think, I am convinced that is the ultimate trick that they are relying on. I know this might sound like a bit of a weird metaphor, but to me, it's like the organ grinder is hoping that the noise and clamour of his instrument, because he's winding it like crazy, he's making sure, as much energy as he can into making sure that noise, that clamorous noise, is keeping your attention, so that you don't notice the pickpocket in the crowd who's lifting your wallet.
Mm-hmm.
They are relying on this continuous assault of propaganda and disinformation, misdirection, and nudging tactics, all these kind of psychological methods to keep people constantly stumbling forwards like they're punch drunk. I've described it like that before. People just reel from one crisis to the next. They can't wait to be told what they need to support this week. And they've already forgotten all the shit they tripped over the week before. They're ready with their next YouTube post or Instagram picture or whatever to represent the latest thing that they're suddenly concerned about. That constant sort of whipping the herd forward means the herd isn't really paying any attention to where they're actually going. They're just too busy stumbling forward as best they can, trying to cope with day-to-day shit. That's why I cannot shut up. Because to me, the only way you deal with that is you just literally have to keep talking. Eventually, people do lift their head up, and even if at first they think you're a bit of a weirdo, a bit crazy, whatever, it's planting a seed. The more people they hear it from that point forward, then it will start to coalesce and they'll start actually asking themselves questions.
Yeah.
I definitely think it's worth reminding people about the Cassandra mythology, because it's helpful to show people how the system, the narrative writers, the propaganda will constantly try and push you back down again when you start thinking about this kind of stuff and asking yourself questions and talking to other people about it.
Sounds a lot like you can't handle the truth.
Yeah. Don't spook the horses. You know, you're not allowed to talk about this stuff because you'll make people afraid. Oh, right. So your propaganda.
Madness.
Yeah, reefer madness. Yeah, your current heat wave propaganda is literally meant to terrify people. But me talking about what is factually provable, like some of the links you shared, you know, showing the fact that, look, these businesses are up and running. They're doing this stuff. That is a fact that you can go and reference again and again and again. But if we talk about that, we're supposedly frightening people. That's gaslighting, yeah? That's the abuser accusing the victim of being the abuser. He said, no. And I know it sounds a bit, or it can sound, for some people, it can sound like you're being self-delusional in telling yourself that, you know, there is this optimistic possibility that all you need to do is keep talking about this stuff and it will stop. Yeah, I know it's not that simplistic. There's a hell of a lot of nuance involved. And it isn't a matter of just talking, obviously. It needs people doing other things as well, yeah?
Well, short of tearing all the internet of the world down and like all that, I do think that if people are aware, and that's why I do try to talk to people about it still, as much as I go out anymore, but I do try to talk to people about the whole invasion of the body snatchers. I swear, this whole I think probiotic thing.
In a similar fashion as well to the mythology, for those people that they like to label, you know, like they like to label us as Cassandras, Cassandra knew that she needed to speak about it. It wasn't that she was in some kind of psychotic state of mind. She just knew that she had to give other people the information in case they would listen. You know, it's like, I want to say it's sort of a moral imperative, but it doesn't even, I feel it doesn't even reach the level of being a moral imperative. It's just an absolute. You know, if you know that something bad is about to happen, you need to say it to other people. You know, you need to externalize it, even if they don't want to believe you. So, oh, well, okay, they don't want to believe me. That's unfortunate, but I cannot, in good conscience, not say it. That's my biggest problem. You know, when I meet people and start talking to them about stuff, and it's like, I just feel like it's the right thing to do, to tell them about certain things, and then they have a freak out. It's like, I'm sorry, you know, but this is the reality of what's going on.
Well, and this Richard Clark dude, he's calling himself the Cassandra, and him and his buddies, they warned us about these things that they planned, or the terrorists planned. They're the good guys.
You mentioned him earlier, the Unabomber.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you look into his history and what led him to where he was
on the right track.
Yeah. But he was molded into that direction from his background, you know, from his interaction with the system itself.
Yeah.
They set him on his path. He attempted to get off the path they'd forced him onto, but he realized in the end that what he was going to do was the only option left to him, basically.
He should have read Cassandra. Yeah. He should have been aware of that.
Well, it's one of those unfortunate ironies that he ended up serving exactly the purpose that they wanted. He replaced the Weather Underground because that had fallen to pieces and been revealed in so many different ways that they needed a new homegrown terrorist organization, and they were hoping somebody like him would be part of forming that organization. You know, this was before they came up with things like Al-Qaeda, the database.
Honestly, I think that we've all been molded like that, just in different ways, just to a lesser degree, maybe. I feel like we've all been directed in our path, even like things like 9/11 and the Kennedy assassination. I think were deliberately done to flush out people like us, people that would question what was happening.
Oh yeah. Jules, my friend Jules, she talked about
the C19 are there too.
Yeah.
Another flushing of the people out because they gotta see who's gonna go along and who they need to get rid of.
That they gave us all of these technologies so we'd identify ourselves.
Yeah.
I mentioned this yesterday that how ridiculous the whole Great Reset is, with Klaus Schwab at the head of it as a Bond villain.
It's frightening.
With his weird book and his old prophecies that he's fucking, it's crazy. But we all could see it. It's all projected out in the open. And anybody with an open mind or with a awake mind, and not a woke one, that was aware of, that's fishy. That doesn't look good. But it's so obvious. They just throw it out there, like they want us to focus on them, right? So I really have a double feeling about all of it.
They want us to feel that it's inevitable as well. Like Klaus himself said, the concept of us going back to the way it used to be is just a fiction. In other words, it's inevitable. You have no choice. It's already been decided for you. It will happen.
China is leading the way in the Great Reset. They're a couple of years ahead of us. They have already have the social system and the surveillance and all that. It's a completely Great Reset-y what Xi Jinping is doing.
I remember, before I mention this, I'd just shout out for the people in the chat. Non-violent extremists have put in Ted Kaczynski. Yeah, that's his proper name, the Unabomber. And he's put a link in for Ted's manifesto if anyone's interested. Go and have a look at it. And maybe if you're not aware of that history, it'll make more sense, like some of the things we've been saying about that situation. Yeah. And he talks about some of these things that he knew were coming and why he felt he needed to protest in the way he did. The other thing I was going to mention was it's been, I don't know how many years, quite a few years ago now, I did a broadcast where I was talking about the potential. This is like before anything to do with Klaus came to the public or anything to do with the scamdemic. But the potential that the whole reason that they were promoting things such as veganism, this is before the woke really took off, before they appropriated the concept of being awake and turned it into the woke joke that it is. But they were pushing the concept of veganism, of either not eating meat at all or reducing your meat input. They were encouraging people to form local community grow ups, getting together and sharing food amongst them, making little localized community organizations. The system itself, underneath that cartoonified Dr. Evil propaganda that they push from the WEF, there has been a steady encouragement towards the concept of decentralizing and living in a more what they would call sustainable fashion. I don't describe it as sustainable. I'd prefer to describe it as traditional, because farmers, like I talked about earlier, farmers used to save some of their seeds to grow the next season. That is literally the definition of sustainable. It's just it never used to be called anything like that. That's academic jargon that is to fuel an ideology. But the reason I'm mentioning it is because I feel even more so now, this has become what this situation is about. The controllers' favorite method to use to manipulate the population is the Hegelian dialectic, which is why they like to push people into polarized positions and then set them against each other. And the result thereafter is this synthesis that's hammered out in the middle of those two polarized positions. So on one hand, we've got the cartoon comic book evil supervillain of Klaus Schwab telling us that everything's going to be done by robots and AI and automated, and you can't have this, that, and the other. And on the other hand, we've got an encouragement to decentralize, to get back to growing our own and producing our own energy and things like that. A lot of those things I agree with and I would support. But the point I'm trying to make here is that in many ways, this situation serves the purpose of those people that are attempting to force this change upon us.
Oh yeah, it's like that video where I showed the World Economic Forum and the Sustainable Development Goals, the games they play, where it all is the alternate World Economic Forum plan sort of thing, where they do the local, they do the small grower, everything. And I can't help but consider that by getting more people planting things and more people growing trees, all these things, like if we're all putting this new life in the ground, we get the karmic debt or whatever. Like we're all taking part. We're all helping to spread it. So it's not like we could just blame them. You did it too, you know.
Or do you remember the little animated video series? It was in 4 parts. It was called something like Metropolis.
Plandopolis.
Plandopolis, thank you. Yeah, it's Anonymous. You got it on your channel, yeah. Even though she never really, even though the woman voice who narrates the story, she never directly says that they grow food individually in their little home pods, you know, their little whatever they're given to be their dwelling. They grow food on those places. They grow food in apartment blocks and stuff like that, and then it's all put into a community co-op. Yeah, so
it's all community based, and then it goes to the food hub.
Yeah, it's interwoven that at the ground level, you know, if I talk about it in a more metaphorical fashion, at the ground level of the pyramid, the majority of the population will be living in an environment that they think is communistic, because everything is shared, everything is localized, and you're part of a little community group that produces your own stuff mainly. You know, a lot of it is locally produced and then put into this co-op system. But as you go up through that pyramid, you get to that centralized controlling hub, which organizes all those little localized groups into one federalized umbrella grouping. And that then is the actual system of control. You know, that's why in the past I tried to describe it, or the difference between, yes, there will be elements of communism, and yes, there will be elements of fascism, corporatism, because the pyramid doesn't care, you know, how it attacks you. All it cares about is being on top of you, you know, to keep that tyrannical structure in place. And this
exactly, it's like go ahead.
It gives the public, the general public, the comforting illusion that they're doing all that's required by things like the SDGs. You know, they're being local, they're caring about their community, they're not overproducing pollutive stuff, they're not over-consuming, etc., etc. So they feel better about themselves, but the system itself is basically still operating in the same way that they claim is bad for us. You know, everything is still being centralized and moved around through massive logistic hubs and things like that.
You still have to buy the Monsanto seed.
Rosie Corey used to talk about the little community systems that would be in cities. They have this thing called the 15-minute city, where every community is breaking down like to 15 minutes for you to get to anything you need in that area, and it would all be broken down in districts, like the 12 districts in Hunger Games kind of thing. In the city I was living in before, Edmonton, they have like 12 districts now that they've formed. But yeah, you have your regional food system, which is the main system, probably supplied by even bigger system. But then you have it broken down into community base, where you have all your food hubs, and everyone would go to the food hub for their food. I think that they're going to eliminate grocery stores eventually. It'll just be food hubs. Yeah. And then that way, you have to have all the credentials you need to get into these food hubs, or you are at the wayside.
Here in the UK, it's not often mentioned in the media at all, because it's the kind of information about how things are not working well in the UK, you know. So it's generally not politically correct to talk about this kind of stuff. It's like the amount of homeless people and things like that. But there has been a steadily growing reliance on what are called food banks here in the UK. which are basically like charity run and organized, those kind of centralizing hubs of food charity. So you can go there and, you know, if you can't afford to buy a week's worth of shopping, you can go there and they'll give you a load of stuff for free.
We have those here too. Food
same in North America.
This is the thing. It's becoming more and more commonplace everywhere that these little groupings have been running in the background, and more of your local community is becoming reliant on them because people are finding it harder and harder to do the usual day-to-day survival things, you know. And those little food banks may be being run by a charitable organization, but if you trace the connections of that charity and look at the umbrella groupings that are connected to it, etc., you will find the same kind of funding streams that are connected to a lot of the other things that we're often shouting about and complaining about, you know?
Yeah, like over here, and all around that, the Jose Andres, that World Central Kitchen, these people feeding the people in need. And beggars can't be choosers. So you get that Beyond Burger, if that's what they're serving, or the generic version of it. Yeah.
I remember for quite a few years after the 90s, as the internet was slowly being reformed after 9/11 and everything, there was a lot of discussion. I know a lot of it come from a particular source, you know, that's infamous now. It's partly, I don't want to mention him, but the Walmart stores in America would all become those hubs that people would rely on. And over the years, there's shown to be a certain amount of truth to that suggestion, even though his initial shouting about it was, you know, quite a lot of conspiracy porn, basically. But that was how he generates his money, you know. But there is quite a lot of truth to that situation. It's just that the way it's emanated in most countries is, rather than being a particular corporate storefront, it's being hosted in a what do they call them, like an industrial unit warehouse. Here in the UK, we have these areas that are called like industrial parks, and they're low-level industrial centres. You know, you can have mechanics there and carpentry shops and things like that. They're not heavy industry. And most of the food banks usually set up in those kind of warehouse units that are on the industrial parks. So it's not necessarily a Walmart store, or here in the UK, it'd be more Asda, you know, because Walmart own Asda now, so people would think it'd be Asda that'd be doing it. But it's going to be those little food bank setups. You know, they're going to end up becoming the primary distribution hubs. And as you say, you're not going to get a choice. So it's not going to be like going to the supermarket and picking and choosing what you want. You'll go there to get a food ration, to get your parcel.
Yeah.
So, now you got me doing it. Oh no!
Optimism, Cookie. Optimism. Come on, come back. No,
well,
it's a nightmare.
Have ice cream in the New World Order.
We will, I think. Yes.
I hope they deliver.
To your sewer tube. There could be a little drone that stops at each one. You'll be good.
Yeah, they've been suggesting them a little bit. There's been a few little stories like that have gone round recently. Things like delivery drones, and you know, some particular company is going to start using delivery drones soon. They've been suggesting that some of the supermarket chains will start changing their vehicles. You know, they're going to start using more electric vehicles, and of course some of those electric vehicles will be automated, or they'll have the required hardware built into them, and maybe they'll have a human operator to begin with, but eventually they'll be automated.
Well, because the human would be dangerous, because they'd carry cooties. Yeah.
Plus, we got to justify all that 5G.
Yeah.
Soon to be 6G.
Yeah.
If the recent WEF convention that they had, I can't remember the name of the particular talking head that was having a little he was almost having an orgasm about it. He's like, oh, soon we'll have 6G. Soon people's mobile phones will be inside their body. Oh, we'll have holograms. Oh, he was getting very excited.
Yeah.
But the potential of jumping to 6G by next year, as he was suggesting, I very, very much doubt that will happen.
Plus, once they get all the infrastructure in place, because the 6G was like in your walls and in everywhere, hundreds of sensors in your house, which some people, especially if they're getting all new homes in smart cities, those ones are they'll be online first.
And if they're going to have every potato connected to a hub.
And your soybeans. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now I've just made myself curious about whether somebody out there will create a music track based on the Wi-Fi signals from a field of potatoes. That would be quite novel. I'd actually be quite interested to hear if it was possible, what that would sound like. They'd probably just start screaming at us, unplug me now.
Well, you could get that creepy witchcraft music lady and listen to the spores talk. That's kind of musical. Yeah, and that last video there that I did where the people were like, what is that sound in the background? No, it's the spores talking to you and singing. It's music.
Just sort of touching back on things like pre-programming and foreshadowing, which is a lot of what they've been doing for a number of years towards this great green reset agenda. And I know I've mentioned it before, but just as a reminder in that connection to them analysing data, I found it very, very interesting that the conclusion to the previous season of the show called Westworld that they had been doing. And I thought that previous season was going to be the end of it, because at the end they kill off the big bad AI machine that was supposedly the super evil machine. But the way they analysed the data on there, whenever they showed the kind of visualization that the protagonists were using to interpret what the AI wanted them to do and what it was monitoring and things like that, was a corona. It looked like the corona of the sun, and the data would spread around the ring of that corona, and then you'd get like a waveform pattern in there that represented the different data that was being monitored. So I know it might sound like a bit of a weird connection, but it does make me wonder if they are purposefully creating that kind of environment where they will, in an almost, I can't think which particular author it was, might have been P.K. Dick, because he's done so many things that sort of were so prescient, but they're sort of introducing almost like a techno-mysticism. You as the human individual, as the living being, you don't interpret the data directly. You don't look at all the zeros and ones. You hear the music of the data that comes in from those systems, from that field of potatoes. And you base your interpretation on what you're hearing, and then the AI interprets your reaction and your input in relation to that data. It even more separates the population away from being able to interact with the technology that governs their lives and their environment. Do you see what I mean? It's sort of put in kind of like a mystical layer of non-understanding of occulted systems. You can't understand this thing. All you can do is listen to the music of it.
And honest, what the computer tells you is happening is really the thing that's happening. The potatoes really are singing you that song.
A computer can't lie.
No. Sorry, dude.
That may be true on the basic machine code level, something is either on, receiving signal, or off, not receiving or transmitting signal. But when it comes to the various now multiple layers of interpretation and visualization that we use to make use of computers, like now I'm looking at a screen with images and text and audio, and there's things on the screen I can interact with, I can click on stuff and whatever. That's a visualized layer of interaction that can contain deception. It can lie. You know, how many times has Microsoft given you a message saying, oh, 3 hours to update, and 6 hours later you come back to the computer and it's still updating?
Yeah.
You know, computers can lie through those layers of interpretation. You know, in a way, you could argue that the very definition of interpretation, you know, is open to abuse, so therefore it could be called a lie. So unless you want to learn machine codes, folk, yeah.
Shut it down. Shut it all down. I put the link there for that Wikipedia page for that book. Okay. People should read it. Although this was his warning so that then they would fix all those things, like you can't jettison off the satellites and break the communications now because they've done their little CubeSats and there's tons of them and they'll all make up for any missing pieces. And it's not just these fiber optic cables at beachheads. We've got everything's distributed now, democratized, distributed, and it's decentralized. These are supposed to be good things, right?
Well,
but it's everybody spreading, making more networks and more networks that it's all hooked into. None of it's separate. I mean, unless you're making all of your own stuff from parts that you manufactured, you know, it's all at the root of it would be their world.
Yeah, their code.
Yeah.
This is something that I've tried to get across to people for many years who do have an interest in electronics and computing and coding and things like that. It's like, just be aware of the fact that anything you're working with, if you haven't literally created it yourself from scratch, then it could have elements of code in it that are there to either, you know, mess up what you're doing or monitor what you're doing or create a backdoor into your system, whatever.
Yeah.
Every computer has a ROM chip on it, which is the most basic instructions to get the hardware talking to each other and things like that. And most of those ROMs have proprietary coding on them, which belongs to the manufacturers of, you know, whichever particular manufacturer made that motherboard. And the majority, I don't know the ins and outs of that code. The majority of people certainly don't, you know, and that can be providing a direct monitored connection to everything that's happening in your computer system or your device, if you're talking about a mobile smart device. So I think I just like to remind those people who claim that they're like hackers and they were, you know, a code ninja and all this kind of shit. And it's like, really? Are you? Okay. Just go back and look at all that information, especially go and reference the time period around somebody like Ted Kaczynski. And you look at the surveillance technology at the time and you think that just because you can spoof Facebook, that means you're somehow some kind of hacker that's evading the system. No, don't be silly.
Yeah, the machine's got you.
Yeah. Be aware of the environment that you're going into. Yeah. This is in some ways, you could call it a dangerous environment, a battlefield. You know, it's just for the majority of us that make use of computers and the internet. It's there just for fun and entertainment, etc. You know, none of that stuff is generally our concern. But that doesn't mean it's not there. That doesn't mean it's there to mess with you in some manner. Yeah? I'll put the link in the YouTube chat for that wiki page and in the Odyssey chat.
There was Amazon links and all kinds of stuff. Buy it used somewhere. Don't give the guy any money, obviously, but it's an interesting book.
Wrong link. Sorry, I was talking out loud. I thought I'd put the right link in there. I haven't. I put the wrong link in there. Because I'm a dummy. I'm a slacking.
You did it right. It was the computer that did it wrong.
Yeah, see, it's that ROM chip interfering with me again.
Yeah. No, but we use the computers for such fun things and nice things and sharing information and all of it. And then how long until they're deep faking grandma and they're the whole rewriting, instead of your video being from a camera, it's from code, and they can take anybody's visual representation of you and your audio and everything and just make you say or do whatever. Like, it'll be really nice and fun and good, and we can use it for good for how long. And then, I mean, is it just a switch where it's not like that anymore? Maybe that's when they take it down, they crash the computer, but that's just the great internet reset, where then they pollute you to your family. Oh, you're just a nut job that says mean things. And man, they could totally ruin people to their.
I think it's going to become so intertwined into everyday life, and it's going to become so more subtle, to the point of like, even like that guy who was gushing about having holograms and whatever. Even things like that are going to become just stepping stones, transitory. Because eventually what they really want is a direct connection into your thinking, into your senses.
Oh, yeah. Like the feed.
Yeah. It won't be so much of, you have any kind of opportunity to be using your own hardware in a way that you choose, that isn't being, monopolized or manipulated by the various systems that they've installed. Right? You wouldn't even realize. It'd be very much more like Brave New World, where the people just find it pretty much impossible to even conceive of the possibility of not living the way they live. Like Anonymous's name says, meet the savage, Mr. Savage. The very concept of living without the system will become incomprehensible. And the mechanics, or the electronics really, but hopefully you get my point. The mechanics of how the system does what it does will become so subtly embedded into your environment, you won't notice, you won't pay any heed. It will become almost like magic. It will be like techno magic. You don't type
they
on
call
a
it
keyboard.
Automagical. That's what that Peter Diamandis calls it. Automagical.
You don't type on a keyboard. You just think, oh, I'd like some ice cream. And all of a sudden a drone turns up with a tub of ice cream. You probably wouldn't even think that. It would be a subconscious intention, subconscious desire that would be sensed by the system to go, oh, we know that he's going to end up thinking about wanting ice cream. Here, let's send him some ice cream.
You're not selling it the right way, Cookie, because now I kind of like that idea.
You just want to be ahead.
Fucking hot over here, and I wish I could think about ice cream and it would suddenly show up, and
it's not really ice cream.
It would not be bad.
It'll just, your brain will think you're getting ice cream.
Yep.
You won't really be getting ice cream.
Smoke and a pancake.
Subsist on the air while you're hooked up to the VR system.
Yeah, and you're the battery.
They'll actually just be feeding you your own feces.
Waste.
It's the tube that goes straight from your butt to your mouth.
Yeah.
That sounds a lot better. Oh, no.
Did we break your
I'll pass.
Tastes like ice cream.
Yeah.
The first ever single unit centipede. It's like just you with a tube that feeds back into you.
And all this sounds so great, doesn't it? Like, we should put everything in the hands of the machine. We should go supercomputer. But you read those the Foxfire books where they went to Virginia or West Virginia back in the 70s or something, and they interviewed the old mountain people, and I was just reading, and how they talk about how people loved each other back then, like you did for your neighbors because you should do for your neighbors, and never expecting things of people to repay you. It's just you're better people. And that was before all this crap came and just wrecked us, where people don't even want to look at you or listen to you talk. They've got a thing to distract them and play a game instead of listen to your very real things to say. Mm-hmm. Such a screwed up. It's so screwed up. I hate it.
That's the big difference between city living and a small community living. Everyone is so friendly in a community, but when you're in city, it's all packed like a sardine. So no one really wants to talk to each other because they're, like you said, all sucked into their programming.
Oh yeah. When I still lived in town, I actually was scared people by talking to them sometimes. I remember one time yelling thank you to the garbage man, and it was nighttime when they would pick up in my neighborhood, and I scared him. It was funny just to talk. Yeah, he jumped. I'm like, I'm sorry. But yeah.
Jumpy garbage man.
Expect you to talk. Yeah.
You thought you were going to turn out to be some psycho that was just far too appreciative. It's like, get off me.
Yeah. I was freaking people out at the library book sale a couple weeks ago. That was fun. Like these young people, that teenagers or early 20s, and they were talking about books, and I couldn't help it. I had to jump in and tell them, yeah, that's a great author, and yeah, you should look for this book. And they're looking at me like, why are you even talking to us? But I do. Yeah.
I suppose really it's isolation. Even if they may be in a group of 2 or 3 people that are friendly and whatever, it's still that group is isolated from the rest of the community. It's insular. You know, people have been encouraged, again, thanks to the devices, you know, and I'm not claiming to be immune to this kind of shit, you know, but we have been encouraged into a very much insular mindset. You know, I know so many people now, especially younger generation, well, younger to me anyway, millennials and things like that, who actively would prefer you to send them a text than speak to you face to face. And it's not that I'm unfriendly with them at all or anything. You know, when we do meet up, we talk okay and everything's lovely, but given the choice, they would prefer the impersonal exchange of information through text, you know, and that has been, I've noticed it more with the younger generation now, certainly millennial onwards, but really the newer generation, the kids that are like in their early years now, 6, 7, 8, 9, they seem to find it innately difficult to socially interact in pretty much any way at all. They prefer to interact with inanimate objects. You know, back in the day when I was a kid, we used to call the kids that were like that loners. You know, they were the ones who liked to sit in a corner and play with their Action Man all by themselves. You know, they didn't want to join in what the other kids were doing. That was not that common. You know, certainly not overall. So, you know, every kid likes a bit of time to themselves, you know, like adults do. But I mean, in the sense of it became far more than just a trend or a commonality. It now has become the majority. Maybe that's just my own personal experience, because I'm not obviously, like, you know, I'm not interacting with loads of kids every day. I don't see loads of kids all the time and whatever. Maybe it is different.
There's actually studies out on this. Kids are having trouble interacting in real life. I actually remember reading it like last year or something like that.
Yeah.
Just trying to find a link to that.
Maybe they can get them better help and they'll work them through it. They can give them a little...
I think I might have seen your coverage of it, and I remember, I think, or vaguely remember where I might have got some of the other ideas from, because I remember seeing something where they were talking about using electronic pets to help children that struggle with social interaction. So, you know, like the kind of the Sony little doggy toy that you can buy. I don't know what it's called. You know, it's got a certain level of AI in it, which means you've got various interactions that you can do with it. You know, little games that you can play with it and stuff like that. And I seem to remember it culminated with a bit of a backlash from the public, because some of the toy manufacturers were starting to put toys out there, like the dolls that have basically Wi-Fi connections to a home base, and the children are required to, when they get the toy, they need to go online and register the QR code for that particular doll. Right, we do. I don't know whether it's with the manufacturer or whether they have a separate server portal or something like that, possibly. But basically, it's sort of like you go online to register your doll, and that activates like virtual reality interactions with the doll. So you can have interactions with the character of the doll in the online environment, and then the doll itself has a certain amount of electronic interactions that are connected to the way you interact with the thing on the screen. Yeah.
And there's another sensor in your house.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. I seem to remember it ended up reaching this culmination where a lot more parents were coming forward and complaining that they'd found that the doll was connected to the internet, and it had got all this information that their child had typed in willingly, you know, because the child didn't know any better. So the website was asking them for all these different details about themselves, their family, their parents, and the child was just entering all that data.
And the parents probably bought them the damn doll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think for many people, it's not because they're stupid, you know, it's not because they're dumb. It's just they haven't been made aware. A lot of people don't really take that much interest in the technology, you know. As long as it works and does what they want, they don't care how it works. So they're not very aware of how a lot of these systems are integrated in that kind of fashion. So the implications of the situation, like I was talking about earlier, I'll screen share that one story again about or certainly that image at least, because, you know, just makes a visual point while I'm talking about this stuff. But even though the concept of having drones doing field work may seem very appealing to the end consumer, you know, in that food chain, they're probably thinking, oh yeah, I bet that's good. You know, they've got a lack of workers, so these drones will fill in that job, and I'll still be able to buy my apples cheap at the supermarket, blah, blah, blah. And their mind doesn't make the connections, the implications of what this kind of change to farming will create. And they haven't been told just how integrated these systems are. You know, it's not just talking about having a robot that picks the fruit. It's got the implications of things like the super spuds, you know, the biosensors. This apple could have various genetic alterations plus other augmentations included with it. And then you get to the stage of the so-called operators who are gradually being phased out. You know, during the scandemic, when a lot of people were not going out at all, and I was still going out doing my usual thing, and I'd often go in the supermarket near me, and I'd chat to the cashier, you know, because I almost always do. I always pay in cash, and I always say a little word or two to them, even if it's just hello, thank you, you know. But as the shields were being put up and all the silly stickers on the floor and stuff like that, and I kept reminding the cashiers, I was like, you know, you're essential. And they said, oh, well, you know, they've told us that we've got to stay open, and the company's encouraging us to come into work, but be safe at the same time. And I was like, yeah, but you understand that you are essential But what the company is actually trying to do is replace you with an automated electronic system. Think about, you are essential. I cannot get food without coming to you and you enabling that trade exchange for me. Yeah, unless you want me to steal out your shop. Yeah. And just trying to remind people, like, look, you may not be aware of the implications of when they start setting up these systems. The concept of having a human operator, a human cashier in the shop, it's going to be gone. It will all be automated. And then what do you do with all those people who no longer have a job or a way of earning money?
Put them to work in the metaverse.
Yeah, creating content for the YouTubes.
Yeah. Or I've seen video games on that are like virtual reality games that were people like flipping burgers. You go to work at a burger joint. Seriously.
I have been quite, I'll use a classic phrase that I love. I have been quite flabbergasted. Yeah. It's one of those old words. It's a bit like swashbuckling. Yeah. I have been flabbergasted over the last few years. And it's been a few years now that this has been building up. The number of games now that are replicating or simulating everyday tasks. There's one out at the moment called something like Power Wash. And it's basically you're employed to wash dirty vehicles and other things, and on the screen you got your little man with his jet spray thing, and there's this big dirty ship that you work your way along it, hosing off all the grass. And I'm sat here looking at it thinking, is this for real?
The machine's not going to train itself.
People actually
you think maybe they're teaching people to do little tasks online because it's going to be connected to a machine doing it?
Yeah.
I mean, if you go back in time, you have games like Second Life and Sims, where it was like a broad stroke of everyday life. Now they've minimized it to single tasks. So, like, you're seeing how they got people training to train the machines.
Yeah. So one of the most popular ones of those is Farming Simulator.
Farming.
Yeah.
Nice.
There's a lot of those, like on app stores and stuff like that. Your little simulated gardens.
I have tried that one, that Farming Simulator, back in, I think it was either 2016 or 2017. Because I didn't realize until I started looking at them that they release a new one every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and basically, pretty much the entirety of the gameplay is about trying to grow enough stuff so you can get enough money so you can buy the biggest, fanciest tractor. And it's a bit like a kind of collection game. You know, the only real purpose of the game is buying the equipment and putting it in a shed so you can look at it in your virtual
just like
shed.
In real life.
And people spend real money on it, no doubt.
Yeah. I only bought it.
Virtual crap.
It was on sale, and I think it was about £9 because it was out of date one. Like they'd released the latest version, and I bought the older, like last year's version. And I was just curious. It's like Farming Simulator. Right, okay, let's give it a try, see what this does, because it presents itself as being somewhat realistic. Yeah, it's not at all, but it's
And now we've got the drones. Way to go. Way to go, Cookie. My goodness.
You helped. You helped the machine.
I don't know. I did try doing some really weird stuff. Like
was it all monoculture?
Well, I kept trying to like plant stuff in places where I think you weren't supposed to plant them, and I kept letting the sheep out.
Come to your house for that.
I managed to get some sheep, but I kept letting them out because I kept forgetting to close the virtual gate on my virtual field.
Oh no, the virtual wolf is going to get them.
I was too busy driving my tractor. I was having far much. Like, to me, basically, it ended up like a driving game. Because the only fun I found out of the gameplay was basically like, get in this tractor and see how fast I can make it go and see if it can get around this corner and things like that. And it was just fun being silly with the tractor, you know?
Yeah.
So hopefully, if they plug my effort into their drone tractor, you're going to see some crazy tractor stunt driving going on. Yeah.
Let's hope.
It is a very good point that a lot of those games could have been put out purposefully to let them gather the data, because even more so, part of the element with a lot of those games, a lot of new games, full stop, not just those in particular, more and more often now you'll find that the latest release of games requires you to be online to be able to play it. That doesn't mean necessarily that it is an online game or that you're going into a multiplayer game world or anything like that. It just means that the software demands that your system is connected to home base. And the reason they do that more often than not is for data collection. They monitor your gameplay. They monitor how many hours you spend, the style of game that you prefer, the settings that you use in the game. They can even monitor things such as the speed of your reactions to the mouse and keyboard controls and things like that. The speed that you react to things going on in the game world.
What you're looking at on the screen.
If you have a modern monitor with cameras built in, yes, there's eye tracking data involved. Yes,
they've talked about that for quite a while, so I bet that's probably in a lot of them.
I think it is in pretty much all modern VDUs, even though they're not usually called that anymore. But yeah, monitors, televisions certainly have them, and I think most monitors that are built specifically for computer resolutions, they include them as well now.
Yay!
When I managed to find this one that I use now, again, I think I was just lucky. I found it in a sale, and it doesn't have any of those kind of extras in it. It was a little bit out of date to the modern stuff that was available at the time. So I think I was just lucky with that one. Got it on a cheap deal, and it doesn't have all the crap built into it. Look, it gets even here, look. If you can see the screen share. Am I sharing it? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it even gets here, look. This is a page, a Russian cyber threat to Canada worse than previously reported. And there he is.
There's been a lot of stuff coming out with Canada and threats to our internet, basically.
Well, weren't your internet down for like 2 days or something?
Yeah, Rogers, whoever was on Rogers, and all the independents that run through Rogers, because there is no independent really. They all have to rent their machines from the big three. They were out, plus they're interacting. People are upset because they couldn't get their coffee. So, it's just, and now the government is bringing out a solution to the new problem, right? Where they're going to force all the big companies to work together during outages.
So it's going to become
a solution there.
A government-controlled industry. So,
well, eventually, the internet will be a human right. Eventually,
yeah,
it'll just be.
And they're designing everything to work together. So,
have they actually proposed it as a public-private partnership?
I haven't been reading much on it, but I just know that they're trying to figure out a way to get the big three to work together during emergencies. For now, it's just for emergencies at the moment. But we'll see where that goes.
So that would basically mean forever, because according to the government, every day is an emergency now.
Well, we're under threat by Russia, cyber attack threat. So wouldn't that constitute an emergency state? Internet lockdowns, people. Come on.
Yeah.
Get with the quarantine.
Weren't they threatening to demand Alaska back as well off the US? I saw that story.
That's US's problem.
Yeah. But it would be right
Should be
on
ours,
your
but
wouldn't it?
It's basically part of Canada.
I'm not going to open the story, but I really did think that was great when I saw the pictures of him with that haircut. And I just thought, I like it a lot. Dumb and Dumber. He really does look like that character from Dumb and Dumber. Jim Carrey's character.
Yep,
I can't remember his name. It's like, yeah, that's just so appropriate for the Castro illegitimate child, otherwise known as Trudeau. It's Trudeau, innit? You might, I think maybe only the British people get that joke. That was a common slang several years ago. People would add that, what would it be called, a suffix at the end of every sentence. They'd say, in it. You know, it's meant to mean, like, do you see what I mean? You know, to get my point, in it. But it's that Trudeau, innit? It's Trudeau, innit? He's like, no, he is Trudeau. He's easily manipulable. He will form whatever shape the globalists desire him to be. And that includes looking like just a complete dork. He's almost got the Superman kiss curl, but not quite. Yeah. A little bit on his forehead, but yeah. Canada is now a dictatorship, I feel. And that's just my opinion as an outsider looking over the pond at what's going on over there. But yeah, some of the restrictions they've put on you now over there is just, that's the only way I can feel to describe it. It's well on the way to what the globalist agenda desires for the rest of the globe.
Yeah, we seem to be accelerating in our area, at least. Not so much for me, because I kind of isolated where I am right now, so I'm not really feeling any personal effects. But around the country, it's probably pretty hectic, stressful, I'm sure.
I've noticed a lot of sites doing this now as well. You basically don't really have any choice to reject the majority of their cookies. They'll just put the little banner thing up saying that you must accept cookies to use their website. Hang on, my screen share hasn't updated. I switched over to the other screen and I thought it had switched over as well to that other link that you put in. This is on the Time website. Teens are over face-to-face communication, study says. Yeah, this is that thing about younger people seem to not like direct communication, direct interaction. They prefer there to be a electronic distance, whether that be text or what's it called? Is it FaceTime? Where your phone, like, it works a bit like a video phone.
A two-way mirror.
Yeah. I remember that from back in the day in the sci-fi movies. They were always telling us about how we'd end up having video phones, and there were always these massive clunky things on the desk, you know, and they'd still have a little dial on the front and the people would dial numbers into it. So no, it won't look like that. What it looks like is a shiny magic stone that you rub with your hand, and you use your fingers to inscribe sigils on the surface of that shiny magic stone. And if you inscribe the correct formation, the correct pattern of sigil, then the stone will reveal to you magic imagery like this that's showing now on the screen. It's just like magic, folks. So this is what I mean about that kind of techno mysticism. There is becoming such a gulf of different distance between the end user. Man, I'm losing the ability to talk, so I'm melting in this heat.
I was just thinking the same thing. I'm like,
between the end user and how the technology itself operates and what it's connected to. I know for many people they would prefer to not know. You know, as I mentioned earlier, as long as it works, people don't really care. You know, as long as it gets the job done, they don't care how it works. But this is how these manipulators, these people who want to control everything, this is how they're inserting their little bit of toxic shit into all these systems until in the end it's grown like a cancer into this network that is embedded into everything, and it's taking over the way we used to do everything. Farming is one aspect in particular, because obviously food is vital, but it has inserted itself insidiously into every aspect of our lives. And if some of the things we've been speculating about with the like playing games, is programming the AI drones, eventually it won't need the people to be doing what they're doing. The system.
I know they had people playing games to fold proteins, right? Like to make all their new synthetic life and things.
Yeah, that's called Fold It, right?
I don't know what it was called, but I know
I have it. I downloaded one of my computers. I just never actually played it, so I was curious what it's going to look like.
Don't do it.
I didn't play it. Just have it.
I'm tempted.
You.
I thought maybe I could fold it wrong and ruin it.
Nah.
Or no, it might help
Cookie with the tractors. You guys are the example of what not to do. They tell them, don't listen to these guys. They've identified themselves. Yeah, they're the wrong thinkers.
Stop playing with my tractor. But I'm tempted to say that that's actually a good idea, to gamify science research in a way. Although, I know, again, it's one of those things that has a lot of nuance to it. Therefore, there's the element of manipulation and bad shit. But it just reminds me of the same principle of SETI, where the networking, the decentralized networking of the data crunching that SETI does, or used to do. I don't know if they even bother much anymore. But that kind of data crunching can be subdivided. The load can be shared, as Samwise Gamgee likes to say. Oh, share the load, Mr. Frodo. They share out that requirement, that load of data that needs to be sifted through. So in a similar manner, data analysis in particular, obviously, the crunching of massive amounts of data would benefit from encouraging people through gamification to use their hardware to participate in the crunching of that data. SETI was never gamified. I remember doing it back in the late 90s. All you got was this little, it was almost like a browser window. It was a DOS box that you'd look at, and it would show you the activity of the data being passed, and that was about it. But in terms of encouraging people, like gamifying genetic research, no, that worries me a lot, because what are we going to end up with? It's not even going to be a chimera. It's not even going to be that you can identify that, like, it's got the head of a lion and the wings of a bat, and it's just going to end up being a brown blob.
A furry brown blob. Yeah.
People will be competing with each other to see who can get the highest score in the gamification, and you just end up with this genetic mutation blob. Oh, dear. It all sounds terrible. Maybe that's what will be in the ice cream. It'll be the concoction that they put together from the results of the winner of that gamification.
Well, there's lot and serial number. It'll go to you. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, you do that to the tractor cookie. You get misfolded protein ice cream." Mm-hmm. That's what'll come out of your 3D printer on your counter.
It's so salty. That would really ruin it, wouldn't it? Salty ice cream.
You need caramel or something in there.
Oh, that's a point. Yeah, salted caramel's always nice.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't be dissing the salt with my sweet treat pudding.
The machine knows what's good for you. Just shut up and eat it.
Okay. As long as it's delivered.
Oh yeah, it'll be printed. It'll have your waste plugged into it to mine for the molecules to whip them up into whatever kind of thing you could desire. Your salty ice cream.
to feed them to the bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, it's just gone 9 o'clock, so it's been a couple of hours.
I'm melting.
Yeah. If I wind it up, is there anything else you wanted to mention? Any other?
I think I said everything I brought. Other than read the book and find a way to shut it all down, please. Thank you. Everyone have a great day. Yeah.
Will do.
Yeah. They're going to stop you.
I'll get right on it. I'll shut it down.
You'll need some friends.
For all the people tuned in, listening, I know a lot of the regular listeners are well aware of all this kind of stuff. And they're the kind of people that are resilient and mostly optimistic, realistic, but with that optimism as well. Yeah. You've got to be pragmatic. That's the way I'll often tell it to people when they ask me, are you a pessimist or an optimist? No, I'm a pragmatic optimist. Hope for the best and deal with the shit that you have to deal with day by day. Yeah? And as we've been saying for a long time, get yourself as independent as you can. Yeah, if you can grow your own food, produce your own energy, anything and everything that you can do to not be reliant on that system. And of course, as part of what we've been talking about, keep an eye out for, if you're growing your own food, what kind of seeds are you using? Are you getting heirloom seeds? There's a lot of people out there on the internet, but also, in everyday real life, who actively do that. They collect and trade heirloom seeds. So they are around, they are out there. If you want to do that kind of thing, you can find them, so you're not restricted to using the Terminator seeds that the big corporations put out.
And no probiotics in your soil. Don't add their life. Make your own sort of compost teas or whatever you can do.
Yeah. Don't forget about wild edibles, people. There's lots of food out there, wild, and you step on food every day, so consider that stuff too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And don't forget, we sound like the frogs. Yep. Don't forget the element of the community as well, the common unity. That doesn't mean you have to join any kind of clubs. It doesn't mean you have to pay a membership to have a card that you carry around with you or whatever else. But just like you were describing earlier when you was talking about when they went and interviewed those people, the old mountain people and stuff like that, they had a respect for their neighbours, for their community, because they know full well the harsh reality of trying to survive on your own.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. It's the whole reason why, as a species, we are a social community species. Even if those communities stay small, if there's only 100 people that know each other in a local area, that is a community that enables survival. It increases the chance of survival for everyone.
We need each other.
Yeah.
Yep.
So even though the system will like to try and exploit that, and it will like to try and turn it with its Hegelian methods into something that serves it, that doesn't mean it is intrinsically bad. It's still something that we should be encouraging and looking for. The system would like to convince us that there's nobody else out there that thinks like you. There's nobody else out there that thinks that they need to do this, that, or the other. No, it's utter bullshit, gaslighting, propaganda, and they can shove it up their Soylent Green passage. We don't need it anymore. Was that a screen share you wanted to share, Pete? If you're still listening, he might have melted.
It does look orange right there where he is. Orange is hot, right?
That's his Xi Jinping. We might have taken the dog out for a walk. I don't know. Well, I don't want to.
Stream will just keep running.
Oh no, I can turn it all off from here.
I gotcha.
That was one thing that's been great, being able to connect the two, so that we can multi-stream to both at the same time.
Yeah.
It just means obviously being just a little bit careful about the YouTube craziness. But yeah.
Well, as bad as it all sounds, I still say know your farmer. Definitely try to know your farmer. If you're in a big city, there's got to be something that Eat Wild. People bring food in to central locations, and if nobody's doing it in your area, it's a great thing to consider. Although we're halfway through the summer here, but man, I don't know. It's so scary, the food stuff and the medical stuff and everything. I guess every little bit that you can do, it's got to help somehow. Yeah. It's got to help, even if it just makes you feel better.
Yeah.
Do the best you can. When you know better, do better.
Even and I know this, would make some people uncomfortable, but I think part of what's required in these trying times is courage. So even if it makes you a little bit uncomfortable, find the courage to just face up to it. The reality is that if they really do go through with a lot of the shit that they're intending to try and force people into, then there's a high possibility that there's quite a few of us that just won't be around to see the end of it. Yeah. So you do have to give a lot of consideration to you and yours. Yeah. Look for that community, but remember that you are in effect in an emergency environment situation, not the emergency of the like the heat wave shit propaganda that they've been giving us here in the UK, but in the sense that there are individuals and groups that seem to be actively, maliciously trying to bring down the entire world that to destroy all those systems that you rely on for your everyday life. So that is an effect, an attack on you and your family and the people you love and all the people around you. So, please be a little bit pragmatic and realistic in your approach to these things. Protect yourself, look after yourself, and look after the people around you. Because it's only by creating that element of survivability, because we operate as a social species. Yeah. I mean, I could rant further about all of this, but it's why the system has been so insistent on individuating us all and getting us all in the kind of mindset like we were just talking about with the youngsters. They don't want to be around people. They don't want to interact with people. That suits the system perfectly, because it means you will never form a group that can survive against it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every individual can be taken down easily, but the mass of the population, no, they can't deal with that. They know it. That's why they love the gaslighting. Anyway, sorry, just carrying on ranting there before we finished up. I'll say thanks for joining in, and thanks everyone in the chat. I've been posting a few links in there, so please check them out if you're interested.
And I'll gather up all the stuff we talked about, and I'll hook it up on the website, pleasestoptheride.com. It'll all be there.
Good stuff. Thank you.
And we'll be back again. And it wasn't 6 months. It was 4.
Yeah.
We'll be back again. I'm sure. Cool. Sorry.
Please check out both Please Stop the Ride and Anonymous's channel. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on there and links through to websites that have got a lot of good information on.
And I'm working on a new terrible thing, too.
Oh, okay. That sounds so ominous.
It's just crap. I hate it.
The doom and gloom.
I did. Yeah, really? This is why nobody wants to talk to me. No.
How dare you?
Yeah.
We'll have to get you some more
ice cream. I thrive on doom and gloom. I can handle it all.
Well, it's coming. It's coming.
We will see you again soon. And hopefully, folks, please take care and catch yous.
Bye.
See ya.